Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. The dust has settled on the draft. Now we've got training camp battles to look at. We'll have the OTAs coming up, the rookie mini camps, and all that stuff. We'll take a look at all these players might impact those position battles. And do we give Howie Roseman the benefit of the doubt? Is that fair? Is that a fair way to kind of do it? We'll take a look at that and more. Plus some news around the Eagles today. They have picked up the 5th-year option on Jordan Davis. What does that say and what does that mean? We'll talk about it with Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast at InsideTheBirds.com as he joins us now on a Wednesday edition of Football at 4 on the Sports Pass. Geoff Mosher, what's up, dude?
How you doing, Mike? What's going on?
All is well, man. I appreciate it as always. Looking forward to we got so much to talk about with this team. You know, we were talking the other day, all right? The question was asked to me. Last year, the Eagles had what? The number 1 defense in the NFL. The question I got asked was, is it fair to say that this would you say that this defense is a top 3 defense? And I said, I don't think I can say that. Is that a fair answer by me, or am I not giving Vic Fangio the benefit of the doubt and enough credit?
Yeah, man, that's tough. Is it fair to say that right now it's hard to say that, but also right now it might be hard to say that they're not? You know, like, I hate to just not answer the question directly, but every year brings on its new set of challenges, its new schedule, its personnel changes. I think the Eagles will still be a pretty good defense because they have good players. You know, obviously they have maybe the best defensive lineman in football in Jalen Carter, and you see how he can wreck a game single-handedly. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean were huge parts of their success last year. You saw how much of a difference just putting DeJean in at nickel made 5 weeks into the season over Avonte Maddox. Zach Bowen now with stability, and even if Kobe Dean doesn't come back, we'll see what the first-round pick does. And Trotter Jr., I don't think it's far-fetched to say, even with their losses of Milton Williams and Sweat and Slay, that the guys they put in there and have signed and drafted can't do the job. We would have never said last year. In fact, we did say last year that, there's no way Zach Vaughn and Devin White are going to be that good, and there's no way Quinyon Mitchell and DeJean as rookies can step in and just make that much of a difference, but they did. So I think the elements and components are there that they could be a top 3 defense, especially up front if you get really good production out of Olajari, and if you can get Jalen Hunt to continue to grow and Nolan Smith comes back, and we'll see with the other defensive tackle spot. So I think the opportunity is there to be a top 3 D.
Well, I think the opportunity.
I can understand feeling the other way too.
Yeah, I think the opportunity's there, but I mean, you can't tell me today that Ty Robinson is going to make up for the loss of Milton Williams initially, maybe 2-3 years down the road, and if he does right away, great. Is Maro Ojomo going to raise his level to where they're getting the similar production? I don't know about that. Jalen Hunt, Ojolari, and Uche, and Bryce Huff. Okay, are they going to give you the snaps that Josh Sweat? To put my money on Jalen Hunt as we're having this conversation on April 30th, that's hard for me to do, man. I mean, I'm intrigued by that. Fair. I'm intrigued by that. Not to mention, Moshe, all right, I lost Darius Slay. This guy was a very good player. You're putting potentially Kaylee Ringo in there, who's a complete wild card at that spot. The safety spot, you have the greenest safety room maybe in the league right now at that spot, replacing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And by the way, I'm assuming that Zach Baun, who was an All-Pro last year, is as good, if not better than he was a year ago. That's a lot for him to live up to.
Yeah, there's a lot more question marks now than there was at the end of last year. There's no doubt about it. I'm personally cautious of, especially after last year and seeing how good this coaching staff is on defense, of turning those question marks into definitive skepticism. You know what I'm saying? Like, and putting a lid on what I think some of the guys that they have brought in through either free agency or the draft can do. So that's why I say you can convince me that they could be a top 3 defense. You can convince me that they're not going to be as good as last year, and we'll have to figure out a way to compensate for that.
I would agree. I would say on the surface, if I had to answer the question, I have a hard time thinking that the replacements they brought in are going to be better than the people they replaced.
Fair.
Right away.
Absolutely fair.
Right away,
yeah.
right? And then you're also assuming that the guys who had a big part of what your success last year, and I'm hopeful, and I think that Quinyon Mitchell will be as good, if not better. Cooper DeJean will be as good, if not better. Zach Bond, he's a wild card, man. I don't know if I can say he's going to be as good. I mean, geez, he was about as good as you can ask for at that position.
Well, that's where you kind of have to also get into, though, your continuity among your coaching staff, your identity. You know, the Chiefs had to trade L'Jarius Sneed. He was a really good corner. They can't pay everybody, so they traded him. They lost Willie Gay, the linebacker, to the Saints in free agency, and I think that there was somebody in their upfront pass rush also in free agency that they lost to. Obviously not Chris Jones, but, you know, they had a couple of losses on defense over the last 2 years. But as you've seen, they managed to be a far better defensive team last year than offensive team. And part of that is just Spagnuolo, the coaching staff, the culture, the continuity, guys come in, the expectations set. You see that with championship level programs. So while you're right that there's all these losses and uncertainty, I don't think we should be surprised if there's a standard, though, that's upheld and that translates, even with new names, that this is still a really good, rock-solid top-end defense because they, A, do still have really good talent in the areas they need to, and B, the coaching and the standard set could really be a template for them, like for the Chiefs or other good defensive teams that lose a lot of players but still are always up in that top 5, top 10 range.
Right, so it's the theory of, and this is where I'm glad you went down this road. It's, you know, do we give the Eagles, and do they deserve the benefit of the doubt? Hey, any lineman drafted? Oh, he'll be fine because Jeff Stoutland has him. Any defensive player drafted? Oh, they'll be fine. Vic Fangio knows what he wants to do with these guys. Any guy drafted or trade that's made, it's fine because Howie Roseman always wins it. Like, have the Eagles earned this much benefit of the doubt?
You know, I think they're starting to really get into that terrain. Look at the Ravens. They're historically a really good defensive team. 2 years ago, some of the advanced metrics said that was the best Ravens defense in NFL history, which is pretty amazing because, you know, there was the 2000 Ravens and some other Ravens teams that really ranked high as well. We all saw that with our eyes. Now, last year, new defensive coordinator had a ton of losses on defense, and the first 8 weeks of the season, they did not look like your vintage Ravens team. But then they brought Dean Pease in as an advisor, and he had been with the Ravens during some of their best years. They made some tweaks. They started playing their defensive backs a little bit differently to put them in a position to succeed. And lo and behold, by I think the last 6-7 weeks of the season, the Ravens were back to being who the Ravens were defensively. And so that goes and plays into the culture, the coaching, the standard that they've always set, and the benefit of the doubt that you give that organization. I think the Eagles are creeping towards that. Now, it's not like Vic Fangio has been an Eagles defensive coordinator for 20 years, but he's been a really good defensive coordinator in the league for a long time. And obviously he did such an amazing job, him and his coaching staff last year, that I am willing to say I still think this can be a really, really good Eagles defense because of that.
Yeah.
Because of the template, the coaching staff, the talent that they do have. And I'll give some of the benefit of the doubt that the additions that they made are going to be able to hold their own and keep this thing going.
If you were to ask me, Moshe, like, okay, give me your opinion. My opinion would be yes. I think that these guys, Bond will be equally as good. I don't see him, being a problem. I think Mitchell will be outstanding. I think Cooper DeJean will be outstanding. I don't know what to think of Jalix Hunt. I'm kind of up in the air on whether or not, this guy, they just found some freak of nature in the third round that nobody had pegged in that spot. Like, he's a complete wild card. Is Nolan Smith going to take another step forward? Jahad Campbell, where does he kind of fit in? We haven't mentioned him yet. Is that I would be more inclined to say yes. I think the answers to a lot of this, I think, to be very good.
Yeah, I would agree with you too. I think at very worst, as long as they're healthy, right, and they don't have a rash of injuries, because that always changes the conversation. But very worst, they're not going to fall too far from that number one spot. Like, I can't see them going to 19th or 20th because of who they lost. I think I'd be shocked if they weren't a top 10 defense because, again, when you have Jalen Carter, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, and, you know, the way Zach Bond played last year, I don't think it's going to change. It's not like they're changing the defense. So I'd be shocked if they were out of the top 10 unless they had, again, a rash of injuries, and that's out of their control.
Okay, Geoff Mosher, Inside the Birds podcast. Today, they picked up the fifth-year option on Jordan Davis. Number one, were you surprised by this? And number two, what is the messaging? What does that say about Davis, and then, you know, what that means moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, a little, but not that much. The surprise is that this guy is playing in the biggest games of the year, like 11, 12, 13 snaps a game, which is like not a lot. Not that doesn't scream contract extension, but this really isn't an extension. It's just picking up the fifth-year option at a number that's, frankly, it's pretty reasonable. Especially if, and again, this is not for this year, it's for next. It's 2026 season. If in his final season here coming up, you're able to get a little bit more out of him, it gives you another year to coach him up. He did do a good job last year. He did, of keeping the weight down. That was not an issue last year with him. Conditioning was not an issue last year with him. It's still a little bit more about technique and, you know, pad level and not really being a great pass or even a good a plus pass rusher. But it gives you another year to keep working on that. And if you see improvement, if he's 30% better next year than what he just gave you, if he's 30% better in 2025 than what he gave you last year in 2024, then you're like, okay, you can still give him a longer term extension if you want, or you can just let him play out that final year, get better production out of him, get him under a decent salary. You're not overpaying, and then it gives you a little bit longer time to make a decision on whether you're just going to let him hit the market after the fifth year, or if you're going to have given him an extension by then.
All right, I know we're ways off on a couple things here. I just want to get a couple Geoff Mosher, just trying to feel out where you are with where this roster is. Would you say, in your mind, that Makuba will be the guy or somebody else in that safety room, or are they still going to look for a safety outside this organization?
Yes, I love that you preface this with we're still a long way here, because something I say today could be completely different 48 hours from now if they make a signing. But given what I know about how they feel about Makuba and what the alternatives are, I would say Drew Makuba. And that's because, and we talked about this on the podcast, this will be out tomorrow morning when we go to the defensive depth chart. Sidney Brown, you kind of go back to when they drafted him. Vic Fangio wasn't the defensive coordinator, but they were kind of playing Fangio-style defenses. But he doesn't really fit that style where you can line him up as a deep safety, you know, a post safety, a box safety, a nickel back, the way Makuba's skill set is. Because a big part of what Vic Fangio wants to do is, especially when you're a safety, is kind of line you up in one spot and then have you in a different spot once the ball is snapped to make the quarterback think. And there's no guesswork really with Sidney Brown because his skill set is not as multi-dimensional as Drew Makuba's. He's basically a box safety who kind of moonlighted at the Senior Bowl as a post safety and showed that he's a pretty good athlete, which they already knew anyway. But that doesn't make you some great post safety, and certainly doesn't make you a nickel back who can cover, you know, slot receivers there. So to me, Makuba, as long as, you know, he translates as a rookie to what you saw in college, is so much more of an obvious fit because you can use him as a movable piece and make that guesswork for the quarterback that you just can't do with Sidney Brown, or at least you haven't seen that with Sidney Brown yet.
All right. Makuba is very interesting. I heard Mel Kiper compare him to Troy Polamalu, that type of player. He said, when I watched him on the tape, he just was, every time I watched it, I kept saying, where did this guy come from? So I don't know if that type of safety is in vogue in today's NFL, right?
Interesting, because I probably would have said that more about Sidney Brown. Like when I think of Polamalu, I think of a safety who could come up and just knock your helmet off and blitz from the edge. Like, you know, sort of, there was Brian Dawkins, and Brian Dawkins gave way to Troy Polamalu. Makuba does definitely play tough and physical, despite his 185 to 190 frame. So I get that. He certainly plays very physically on tape compared to how his body frame looks, but I don't know if we're going to see this guy, blitzing the A gap and sacking quarterbacks and things like that, the way we saw from Polamalu. So that's kind of an iffy comparison to me.
All right. Right now, you got Kaylee Ringo, Adoree Jackson. One of those guys or somebody else?
I'm going to go with one of those guys. I think the difficulty with Mac McWilliams is two things. One, he's a rookie. And two, he's 5. It's not the size. It's more the arm length and the hand size. It translates more to nickel. Now, it doesn't mean he has to be a nickel. He could just wind up being better than those two guys you mentioned. But for the sake of for the spirit of the question and having to decide right now, I would think Ringo. I mean, I imagine, just knowing what I know in conversations, the Eagles would like Ringo to win that job because he's a 4th-round pick. They invested in him. They want to see him win it and play well. And then maybe, at the end of the year, you can say, hey, I've got my long-term starter there at right corner, a contract extension. You sign these one-year prove-it guys like Adoree Jackson as insurance policies, and if they work out, that's great. But you don't really prefer them to win the job over, the guys that you drafted.
All right. Let's play another game here. Ready? You got
Sure.
Ty Robinson and Moro Ojomo. Do they have similar playing time and impact, or does one of those guys separate and become kind of the third guy?
So I think Moro Ojomo is clearly I know he's the leader in the clubhouse, right? I mean, this is his 3rd year. He showed you something in the time that he got. The Eagles felt that when they drafted him in the 7th round, they got a guy who they should have gone a lot earlier, and they like him. So he's the leader in the clubhouse. Ty Robinson will come in. They like Ty, 4th-round pick. I envision Moro Ojomo starting off early, but by maybe a couple weeks into the season, middle of the season, it might be more of a timeshare. And, maybe there's a scenario where by the end of the year, Ty Robinson is just playing better and more disruptive and, is the guy that winds up playing more than Moro Ojomo, but that's after competition plays out and you're seeing these guys over a longer period of time.
Mm-hmm. All right. Got another one for you, okay?
You know what the best part of these games are, Mike, is that I could be completely wrong and nobody's going to remember that I said this on April 30th.
I disagree. People will say, that Geoff Mosher said that so-and-so, it's good fodder, good conversation. I think everybody loves to try to plug these defenses or these things together. Offense, there's not as many of them right now. But on the defensive side, man, there are so many things at training camp that I'm already intrigued by. I remember last year, training camp, it was, that corner room battle, it's going to be crazy with all these guys. And then it kind of materialized, but it didn't. Remember, Quinyon was like at slot at first, and then they kind of moved him, and then next thing you know, this guy's like an all-pro level player. It was like, man, how could they not have seen that from day one? You know what I mean? But, like, those type of things. Mm-hmm. But the safety thing this year is going to be almost like the corner thing from last year. And then it's at that edge rusher spot. If you were to pick one of the guys, Hunt, Huff, Ojulari, Uche, I don't know, do you put Campbell in the group with that group of guys?
No, I can stop. I'm going Hunt all day, every day in this one. And that's a little bit of a leap of faith, but it's also like the competition, right? Azeez Ojulari is a very good pass rusher, but at his best with the Giants, because he was always hurt, he was a situational pass rusher, a guy who would come in on 3rd down or 2nd along when you're trying to rush the passer. Pretty much at this stage of his career, I think that's what you would say about Josh Uche as well, who's fighting to make the team. We know Campbell, with the Kobe Dean out, Tiad Campbell is going to get looks at inside linebacker and also be situational edge rusher. When he's not an inside linebacker, they'll toss him out there on the edges as well. So, Jalen Hunt showed you at the end of last year, he was playing the majority of snaps at that position because they were real thin. They were basically just going with a 3-man rotation at that time. And what you saw was encouraging and really good and gave you a lot of faith that not only can he rush the passer, Mike, but his run defense was good too. His ability to get off from an offensive tackle, shed it, and then go make a tackle was fantastic.
Geoff,
So if we sit here today, it's got to be him over all those other guys.
Wow, I mean, listen, he was, I think, as big of a surprise because you're right. When Brandon Graham went out, your thought was, man, they're in trouble. And one of the things was, hey, Brandon Graham might not get a sack or yada, but he sets the edge, and he's very good in that role. And Jalen Hunt, who was an undersized guy, coming in as a Ivy League safety, he's out there like you're like, holy mackerel, 58s all over the place. It was pretty crazy to see this guy. I can't wait to see what he brings to the table. I like Ojulari. I like that signing. I think he's a guy to keep an eye on. Very intrigued what happens.
He's always hurt, Mike. You just can't depend on Ojulari. That's why I say it's a really easy yes for me, because what we know, right? What we know is all the other guys have either not played well or gotten hurt, and what we know of Jalen Hunt is that he was well ahead of schedule.
All right, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. I will leave you with this. By the way, yesterday, Kevin Sheehan from 980 The Team in Washington had a Twitter poll, and I thought it was interesting because he asked the Washington fans, have the Commanders gained ground, lost ground, or stayed the same? And a lot of the Washington fans said gained ground on the Eagles. Do you look at Washington at this point now? Have they closed the gap on Philadelphia?
So, Mike, I always listen to your show, and I heard you guys going through that. And what was shocking about that poll to me is that I believe when you read it out, you said 56% of Washington fans think they gained ground. Is that something close to accurate?
Let me go back real quick and pull it up. But I will say our fans said 56%, same as last year. 35% think they've gained ground, and about 9% think they've lost ground.
Yeah, I was shocked that the Washington fans, because let's face it, all fan bases of their teams tend to be a little extra homer.
Here's the answers from them. 53%, final result, 53% think they've gained ground, 40% think it stayed the same, and 6% think they've lost ground.
Honestly, I'm shocked that it's only 53% of Washington fans think they gained ground for two reasons. One, fans are homers. They want to always look at the bright side and only see the goodness, right? So you can tell that fan base has just been beaten through the roof. The opposite, like if Washington had won the division with the kind of roster the Eagles had and the Eagles hadn't, but they were on to come up with a Jay Daniels quarterback and made these moves, like bringing in a left tackle, bringing in a Deebo Samuel. Eagles fans would be in the upper 80 to 90% yes that we've gained ground on this team, because most fans are homers. So I'm surprised. I think it says a lot about how beat down the Washington fan base has been for a couple of days. They're just not ready yet to put their feet in the water. They're still dipping their toes, because I think they've absolutely gained ground on the Eagles, because they've added way more talent than they've lost. The Eagles have lost a ton of talent. Now, I'm not sitting here telling you I think Washington's better than the Eagles or that Washington's going to have a better year, but I think it's pretty clear that they're a force, an upcoming force, and they added some, not just talent, but talent areas that they needed the most. Their offensive line should be significantly better. They still need a playmaker, but at least they added Deebo Samuel. They had a nice corner in the draft. Their biggest loss was what? Jeremy Chin? I'm sorry, I don't compare that to losing like Josh Sweat and Milton Williams and Darius Slay. So I see Washington as a team that gained ground. The big question is, how much ground? Was it enough to say that they're going to win the division? We know the history of the NFC East. I heard you talking to your buddy Geoff at OC. I understand why he put that money down on Washington to win the division, because, hey, nobody has won this division 2 years in a row in going more than 20 years now, and that is one heck of a trend.
Unbelievable. All right, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, Monday you teased that you had an announcement. Do you still have this announcement, or am I going to wait till Monday for this announcement?
Well, you must not be scrolling your Twitter timeline. Josh Hennig knew of my great announcement.
I didn't know if you were ready to reveal this great announcement today, so I was trying to set it up for you.
Yep, no, and listen, I purposely just put this thing out just a few minutes before I came on with you, because I wanted your listeners who might not have seen it to be able to hear it first. And that today I accepted a new job, a new position as deputy sports editor at Philly Voice. So I'll be working closely with Jimmy Kempsky, Evan Macy, Adam Aronson, Nick Tricome, all the great sports writers and staff at Philly Voice, and I look forward to contributing. I'll be writing, editing, obviously doing a lot of Eagles, but other Philadelphia sports as well, columnizing, and I'm really excited about it. And not to worry, I'll still be podding with Inside the Birds. There's not going to be any major changes to Inside the Birds.
Very cool. Well, congratulations there. That's a great team. Jimmy does a great job on the Eagles. Adam's very good with the Sixers. That whole crew is very good over there, and just having you on board, I'm sure, will help take them to another level. And, of course, nothing changes with Inside the Birds, and nothing changes with Football at 4 right here on the Sports Bash. Moshe, I've known you for a long time, man. You are a great professional, and they are lucky to have you.
I appreciate that, Mike. Thank you very much, and I still look forward to being on with you as much as I am. And, we just go full steam ahead.
All right, brother. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks to all your great listeners, too.